Hello, this is the State Senate DFL podcast, Call of the Senate. I'm your host, Senator Jeff Hayden. Thank you for joining us.
Welcome to Call of the Senate. I'm your host, Senator Jeff Hayden. Today, we are going to talk about the not-so-special session in the Minnesota Senate. I am proud to be here with my esteemed colleagues, the Minority Leader, Susan Kent, Senator Melisa Lopez Franzen from Edina, and Assistant Minority Leader Carolyn Laine. Welcome to Call of the Senate.
Morning.
Good morning.
Maybe we'll get right to it. Leader Kent, let's talk a little bit about the special session, why we were there, what we tried to accomplish, and why it was a not-so-special session.
Thank you, Jeff. Good to be here for this conversation because this has been a significant week in a lot of different ways. The special session and the timing of it was really dictated by the governor's peacetime authority. We have to come back into session every 30 days so that can be renewed. So that's what created the timing that we came back. We also knew we had leftover business from the regular session, most significantly a big bonding bill, a local projects and jobs bill, and then different COVID-related spending that we needed to take care of to make sure we're allocating money from the federal government to our local units of government, our counties and our cities, and then a number of other small business grants and things like that. We were able to get a few of those things done, like the small business grants. We did some important childcare work, some HHS progress, but the big things we did not get done. And the other thing that happened, obviously, that then really influenced what was happening and the urgent needs of that special session was the tragic murder of George Floyd. And everybody seemingly around our state and country and world realizing that we need to make urgent, meaningful, systemic change in criminal justice and policing that will lead to accountability. And so that was another big part of the discussion. We convened on Friday the 12th, and then we did some work we actually took a couple days off. The Senate Republicans didn't have us meeting or having hearings for Wednesday and Thursday, but they had announced that we were going to be done by the end of day Friday. So they set this arbitrary deadline, and then they manipulated the process so that we couldn't get any of these things done. And so that's why we are very frustrated with the lack of results from this special session.
Right. Senator Laine, what's your thoughts on it? Not only the George Floyd, issue that really caused us to look at systemic law reform, but what about bonding and the CARES Act? Give us your thoughts on that, if you would.
Yes, well, bonding has been hanging out there for how long? It's just ridiculous that we still haven't gotten it done. And we ended the regular session, should have had it done. But the idea that, we'll have to come back in 30 days gave them a no deadline, so that wasn't done. It seems like it's frustrating because it seems like so often the legislature doesn't get something done without a deadline. And the deadline wasn't there. So it didn't happen. And now at the end of this special session, again, not done. And we're not even sure we'll be back in 30 days. It's possible, but that's crazy of them not to just actually take the time and finish the job. So that was very frustrating. And the CARES money, which is the federal money that can go to local governments, a no-brainer. It's just a matter of working out the details. And we finally had worked out the details in the Senate. And what's going to happen now because the legislature didn't do it? Well, the governor will do it himself. Well, this is an example where he said, anything, I don't want to overstep you guys. Anything you want to get done, get done. I'll be happy to have you guys do it. And couldn't even get that done. So now he'll have to do it. Doesn't this feel, childish?
And I'll follow up on that. I know that the GOP, especially in the Senate, has been harping on the governor's peacetime authority, right? In that they feel like he has too much authority and they want the legislature to be involved. So my follow-up question before I go to Senator Franzen about the George Floyd Act is it seems to be counterintuitive that they wouldn't get that bill done, since that's their message has been that they want to be more involved in the decisions that are made during the peacetime authority.
Right. If you want to be involved, then take action. Act like you mean it.
Right. Senator Franzen, tell us about, you were really intricately involved. You kind of set the whole evening off when we debated law enforcement reform that we called the George Floyd Act, that really did some really smart issues at transforming law enforcement in the state. Help us understand what happened that day and why we didn't get anything done.
Well, as you well know, Senator Hayden, we were there to fight for what's right, to fight for George Floyd and to all the people who have been affected by racism, by police brutality. And the DFL had the Posse Caucus on the floor doing social distancing. We had 5 members of the Posse Caucus, including both of us, and Senator Herr, and Senator Bobby Joe Champion, and Senator Patricia Torres Ray. And we were there to fight, to really make a case for police transformative reform. And in the beginning, the debate, the 12-hour debate, started with a procedural call by the Republicans, Senator Benson calling one of our amendments, our very first amendment, not germane. And it really set me off because we need to have the conversation. We can't debate a bill that actually none of these bills received a real hearing. They received an informational hearing. That's what the public got. And I wanted to make the case that this is no time for games. It's time for action. The public is watching us. The entire country and world is watching us. And we needed to do the work that we were elected to do. And to really cut us off and cut the debate is really a disgrace to the legislative procedure and the legislative process in the Minnesota Senate. And we were not going to stand for it. So we fought hard for 12 hours talking about the bills that we had proposed that never got a hearing, that never got acknowledgement. And some Republicans even admitted, Senator Gazelka admitted that they had not even read the bills. So that is what we have. That is the fight that we have ahead. We had, between the House and the Senate Posse Caucus, 19 of us legislators presented dozens of bills with real teeth. Our first bill, as you well remember, was $6 million to the Post Board, which is great to put resources at the Post Board, but without any accountability measures, without any training specificity. And language matters. As an attorney myself, I worked as a public defender. I remember reading many police reports, and you can just copy and paste. And we need to make systemic change. And what has to happen with our brown and black people all over our state and our country, and Minnesota could be a leader in that reform.
Well, why don't you think that they want to have this debate? I mean, we all watched George Floyd's murder all around the world. As all of us have, we've spoken to news outlets and people and gotten emails from people around the world. Our friends to the right, the GOP, has come out to the site, come out to look at the devastation that ensued after that. Why wouldn't they want to change? What's your insight? What's your thoughts on why they want to cut debate, or why they don't want to have bills that have accountability and teeth?
Well, Senator Hayden, I think if you don't acknowledge that there's a problem, if you don't acknowledge that there's racism in this country and in the state and in every district of our state, you can't tackle that problem. And I think they're tone deaf. If you saw the press conference just yesterday, this was 3 senators over 60, all white men, which I have no problem about that. But the optics plus what they said, that racism was a sidebar, quoting, that just is unexplainable. How can you not acknowledge that there are problems in our system that we can fix together, and that all of our districts, including theirs in the rural communities, we have members in rural communities up into Duluth and Mankato. This is not a Republican Democratic issue. This is a human rights issue. This is life or death issue. And if you're not going to acknowledge that there is an issue about people losing their lives because they've been disproportionately targeted or treated differently, we can go on and on for stories. This one was caught on video, and that is why we are here today in Minnesota. But if you can't acknowledge that there's a problem, you're not going to find solutions for it. So I think they're out of touch with the reality.
And I would add, when you look at the 5 bills that the Senate Republicans offered that were the subject of the debate on Tuesday of last week, of those 5 bills, and inherently those bills weren't bad, the things that they were doing, they were just completely inadequate. They were completely incomplete and do not lead to anything meaningful, especially in terms of accountability. But when you look at those 5 bills, 3 of them were authored by Senator Ingebrigtsen, who yesterday was the person who said racism is a sidebar. I think that just goes, I mean, it is tone deaf, but it also just indicates you can't come up with solutions. And then this is what ended up being, I thought, such a meaningful part of the debate. And our members of the Posse Caucus were just brilliant on the floor in making that case. You can't come forward with meaningful change if you're not listening to people and understanding the circumstances of people of color, of our Black and brown communities. That's why we are where we are.
And I think it's really phenomenal. Not only did this touch a chord around the nation, because people have the experience in different parts of the nation, but around the world.
Yeah.
Around the world, people said, my goodness, we have to go out on the streets because we too have to have this experience of racism in our areas. It's a human phenomenon that we are at the cusp of changing. We need to go forth.
And I'll just say, and we've talked about this a little bit too, I mean, because Minnesota has been the center of this entire massive historic moment of racial injustice and recognizing the needs that we have, the world really is watching what we do.
Yes.
And we have an opportunity to lead, and we have to step up in this moment.
Yes, exactly. Senator Franzen, just on the same topic, but just a little bit of a different angle, can you talk to us a little bit about your work that you've been doing to help small businesses? I know that you own a small business just right on the Lake Street corridor, and you've been intimately involved in that. And someone would say, well, why does a state rep from Edina, our state senator from Edina, so intricately involved? And there's a lot of reasons for that. One, we should all be involved. But secondly, I know that you are a small business owner on that corridor. Also, your heritage, there are a lot of Latinx people who were and business owners who are affected by it. So can you talk to a little bit about the work you've been doing to really try to find recovery and relief for businesses on the corridor?
Thanks, Senator Hayden. I actually own a small business in public relations, and we do multicultural communications and strategic outreach to communities of color. That's just one of the things we're really good at, but we do mainstream as well. We are right off of Lynn Lake neighborhood. Our building got broken into 3 times. I talked to our landlord just yesterday, and how upset he was about what was happening, how much money he has to put out of his own pocket to fix the damage that's not covered by insurance. 2 of our tenants, lost a lot of property, have a lot of property and retail damage that they're not going to be able to overcome. He said he's been talking to businesses who will not open up, will not reopen. And as we know, the Lake Street corridor has been transformed over the years. Our firm actually worked on the taco tour on Lake Street, which has been bringing people from all over the state to come and experience the diversity of Lake Street. And it's a thriving area. Now you drive by it. I drove to my office just this week, and it's just unrecognizable, everything boarded up. And just really devastating to see that economic development is come to a halt, and a lot of businesses will not be able to open up. So there is an imperative for the state to help those businesses, some of them who try to preserve their businesses and safeguard them during the civil unrest, but were unable to keep them without harm. So these folks need some help, and it's not about who to blame. It's about we're human beings and we're all in it together, and what affects the Twin Cities affects the rest of the state. We send a lot of taxpayer dollars to the rest of the rural communities around the state because we have the tax base in the metro area. So this is a time where some of our neighbors are hurting, and we should be working together to find a solution. And whether it's a bonding package that includes some of recovery there for infrastructure, whether it's a separate bill for economic stimulus and small business development, we need to do something because we can't afford for this corridor and others in North Minneapolis, Sunray Shopping Center. This exploded all over the metro area. It's not just confined to Minneapolis. It went all over St. Paul and other areas around the state, frankly. So we need to take care of our businesses, and small businesses have a unique opportunity here to recover, but they're not going to do it on their own because insurance only covers so much.
Right. So, Leader Ken, give us a roadmap from here. I know you're not a fortune teller, but just kind of outline what are the things that we really, really need to get done, and do you think that there's a path to be able to do so?
We need to make a path is the thing. It's too important. And we've talked about a number of these issues. Obviously, the urgent need for important transformative criminal justice and policing reform. The bonding bill, which is a massive jobs bill and creates important work and projects around the state. We need to do that. There's no reason we shouldn't be able to. It's just taken a long time because, again, Senate Republicans are not willing to participate in an open negotiation process, just like they haven't done on criminal justice reform. But we need to get there. We need to do, as has been talked about, what sort of help can we start providing, much like we do with disaster relief when we have a hurricane, a tornado or a flood.
I'm used to those in Puerto Rico.
I know. As a girl of the Gulf Coast, that slipped back in. But when we have a flood or a tornado, we step up as a state to help those communities recover, and we need to do the same here. So we just have to get back together, but we need to make sure that we don't allow Senate Republicans again to manipulate the process so that they can delay and avoid engaging meaningfully in negotiations, and then walk away from the table and then blame somebody else that a deal didn't get done. We're not gonna let that happen. We're not gonna do it. We tried that in good faith this last time. We're not gonna do that this time. There will be much more accountability and transparency on this process.
So law enforcement, yes, absolutely.
The other piece too that came up in the press conference yesterday was, why is Restore the Vote part of our proposals? Well, because we need systemic change, and it's not just about public safety. It's about every part of our government that has inequities, education, we can go on and on, healthcare. So we have to look at this broadly. And if we're just gonna look at it in silos, we're never gonna fix the problem that is really ingrained in our infrastructure in terms of our government. So I just wanna bring that up because Restore the Vote was talked about as, we want felons to come out of jail and vote. And I'm like, yes, if they've done their time and they have no probation, they should be able to vote. That's exactly. So we gotta hammer that home.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important. It appeared to me that those senators were out of touch with most Minnesotans, and they certainly are in denial, or somehow in all the years they've been on this earth, they don't see race or color, and everybody else can see it. So I'm not quite sure what they were thinking, but I think it is important for us to talk about it. So to sum it up, we have law enforcement, transformative law enforcement to do, bonding to do, a job creation bill right now in the middle of a pandemic where people are hurting, right? We still need to get the money out, and we've asked, Senator Kent and I have asked the governor to use his authority to get that money out to cities all over the state that have incurred significant amount of expenses because of COVID. So hopefully that will be done. And then we can have whatever kind of conversation about taxes. And I'm not quite sure how that works in a situation where every day the deficit is ticking up without significant help from Washington, which seems to be broken as well. But that's kind of what it sees on the docket. So anything else you guys like to add before we close up? I'm certainly open.
And thank you for your leadership, Jeff.
Yes.
Well, thank you.
Yes, Jeff, absolutely. You have been remarkable, as has Senator Franzen, Senator Champion, Senator Torres-Ray, and Senator Herr. We're so grateful for your wise voices and perspective in leading this conversation. And I just want to say, I think it's important for everybody to understand this isn't just a Minneapolis-St. Paul conversation. The issues about policing occur throughout the state, and that has been well documented in the Ellison-Harrington Working Group. And I know even in my own community, there has been an amazing amount of energy for change, for real change. And I know we're seeing that around the state, and that is something that we cannot ignore. We need to respond in this moment.
Well said. Well, Senator Melisa, Lopez, Franzen, Senator Carolyn, Laine, and Leader Susan Kidd, thank you for being on Call of the Senate.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Call of the Senate. I'm Senator Jeff Hayden, and I hope you enjoy getting to know my colleagues and hearing about important things that are happening at the Capitol. If you'd like to hear more stories, please visit our website, senatedfl.mn, or connect with us on social media with the handle @SenateDFL. Thank you.